So today I am here with Christine Diorio, and we are going to be talking about the emotions during divorce and how choosing the right attorney and professional team as a whole can really help you navigate that. So I'm going to let Christine introduce herself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, hi, Tina. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to have this conversation. My name is Christine Diorio. I own a law office or law firm in Tampa, Florida. We focus primarily on family law. We do also provide estate planning services. We're about to celebrate our fourth anniversary in August.
Hey, congrats.
Yeah, I'm excited. I opened my law practice based on my own experience through divorce. It's something I feel really passionate about, helping my clients actually stay out of contested litigation wherever possible.
Hmm.
Through your work, sometimes that's impossible. Sometimes that's just part of the deal. But we really pride ourselves on helping our clients see that there are many paths forward through divorce. And traditional litigation is only one.
Hmm.
So I do try to spend a fair amount of time building up education around that. Like, there are different processes that you can use to get divorced, and they don't have to include, scorched earth, which
Yeah.
I think is what most people sort of associate. So we've grown. We now are a team of four, actually five. We have a gentleman who works for us doing our estate planning. But our family law team is now two attorneys and two rockstar paralegals, so that we're able to really service our clients at the highest level. But anyway, that's just a little bit about us. We're in Tampa, but we do take cases all over the state of Florida because, as you know, ever since COVID, now everything's online.
Yeah.
So
Things have
especially
changed.
and so if you're looking to avoid litigation, if you're looking towards mediation, settlement, your case can happen start to finish without ever stepping inside a courtroom.
Hmm.
So we're able to actually help people all over the state of Florida.
Awesome. Well, so let's talk about, emotions in divorce, right? So generally when clients find you, what state do you normally find them in? Emotional state.
It does vary. I think, but I would say on a general level, most people are in a state of fear of
Mhm.
the most folks haven't been through a divorce, although you do get your share of folks that have been through it before, and that's another reason they're scared.
Yeah.
So, they know it can be bad. So I think fear is the biggest emotion that I see. And then it just depends on, are they the party who is wanting the divorce,
Mm.
or maybe they don't really want it, but they've come to terms, they've worked themselves through, which is funny. I find women, um, I'll be honest, I do get most of my clients are women,
Mhm.
just because of my messaging, and I talk about my experience as a mom going through divorce and everything. But we do have our fair share of men.
Mhm.
But I would say that I find women most of the time, if you're coming to see me, they have actually worked through your divorce and your decision, and they've probably been ready for this for a long time.
Mhm.
Men kind of come in a bit more like shell shocked,
Okay.
maybe weren't as ready for this. They were hoping she wasn't serious about it. And so, there's that dynamic that I see. But then I do have, if there was betrayal in the marriage, then that's like a separate category, whether it's
Yeah.
been domestic violence or cheating, infidelity, or even sometimes they find out there's hidden money or there's
Right,
hidden
financial.
accounts. So if there's any sort of level of betrayal on whatever level, that client is in a heightened emotional state that can be challenging.
I think most people, as you alluded to, right? Like most people don't get divorced multiple times, or if they do, maybe twice, right? And sometimes that first divorce can really influence their mindset in the second one. But I think generally when people find me, they're very overwhelmed because, as it already takes so much for two people to decide to end a marriage to begin with, especially if there's young children involved, right? Like generally, this isn't an overnight decision, right? It takes years sometimes to get to that point. And so now you've kind of decided, okay, this is the end of this stage of our relationship. Now what? And
Right.
that now what is very overwhelming for people. You start Googling how to get divorced in Florida, divorce attorney Tampa, whatever it is, right? And now you're just kind of hoping that you stumble on the right professionals who are going to help you through that process and not make it 10 times worse. And
And
that's
the
one of the things I kind of wanted to talk to you about today is the sort of the fact that this industry has two kind of categories of professionals, right? The people who do this work for, the reason of wanting to help families restructure and really having a passion for the work. And then unfortunately, there's a different subset of professionals in this industry who know that this is where the money is because there's a lot of emotions, right?
Mhm.
So maybe
Right.
we can talk about that a little bit.
We play upon that. So that, that was one reason that I felt called to open my law office and be a little bit different. And the promise that I make to all my clients is, no one at my office is ever going to kind of stir up the conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and file a bunch of, pleadings that get everybody all upset just so that we can bill higher. Because, of course, as you know, most of the time, family law attorneys are basing it on the billable hour.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the more litigation, the more conflict, the more problems, the higher and higher the fee step. So unfortunately, the way the system is set up, it's adversarial,
Yeah.
and the lawyers, the more adversarial it gets, the more the lawyers are going to make on the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that suffer because of that are families.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to kind of, come in and be a little different is that isn't what drives me. The profit, of course, I'm a business. Of course, we make money.
We all
Of
have
course,
to pay our bills.
yeah, and no matter how amicable, there's no cheap divorce.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. It's and most of us spend quite a bit of money on that wedding, so we might expect we're going to spend some money on a divorce too.
Right.
But there's no reason to drum up conflict, increase the conflict, and increase the adversary. The sense of the adversarial process just to increase my bottom line. I'm actually there for my client and their family because I really believe that you're still a family even after the divorce when minor children are present. And so
Right.
nothing happens during the process of your divorce should become so nasty that the two of you have no hope of co-parenting when it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyers that are involved have a lot to do with setting that tone. The problem is most people, the knee-jerk reaction, their instinct, as soon as they realize this is what's happening, the divorce, is they go straight to an attorney. And of course, the first person they're going to ask is the person in their family or friend that's been through a divorce.
Right.
And the concepts out there amongst the general public is it's go time. It's time to go to war.
Right. Go for the jugular, right? I'm coming after you for everything you have.
You need a bulldog. You need a shark. You need a scorched earth. And that is everything wrong with the process because when we have two people starting off in a state of fear,
Mm-hmm.
no information, going to the most aggressive attorney in town, that is a recipe for hell,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what happens for most, and it did with me in a way. It's like I didn't know, I was an attorney at the time I got my divorce. This was 16 years ago now. But it was like, and I love the idea of a collaborative divorce. Unfortunately, it was just coming onto the scene, and my ex-husband was not there. It was not going to be a collaborative experience.
Right.
And so I didn't have that option. And so we did end up in traditional litigation. I had 3 different attorneys. I went through a divorce, a modification, and a relocation over the course of 5 years. We did not co-parent well. We did not have a good relationship. Lucky for us, eventually about 5 years into all of that, we were like, okay, what are we doing? This is just stupid. And so today, our kids are now aging out. They were 1 and 3 at the time we separated. They're now 19 and 17.
Yeah.
So I've basically lived this their whole lives. I'm remarried, have another child, everything's fine. And I actually have a great co-parenting relationship with my ex-husband. I would not say we're best friends, but I said we really work as a team well on doing what's right for the kids. So I just say that in the sense even when you start off nasty, there's still hope to right it. And again, it's having the right professionals with the right mentality to kind of lead you towards the people that can help you kind of right the ship. So I know that you'll be a fan of this statement.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wish all of my clients did first go to a divorce coach before they come finding me. Now, they're lucky to find me because I'm one of the nice guys. I'm one of the people that's well them. You can use me as a mediator and never even have attorneys and save a ton of money. Not every lawyer is going to offer that, right? They want the $5,000 to $10,000 retainer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I educate them. Here's the really, we offer about 3 or 4 paths at my office.
Mm-hmm.
How we can do your divorce. Unfortunately, when you go to most attorneys, they're just going to offer you the traditional litigation.
Well, and ethically, they're actually supposed to talk to you about all the options, right? Like from an ethics standpoint, that is part of what the conversation is supposed to be, is talking through all the alternatives aside from litigation. And you know what's
Really?
interesting too, Christine, is that like I obviously I focus mostly on the mediation work I do. It's mostly pro se, which is clients who are, you know, for those of you who don't know, are clients who are not represented with attorneys. And what's been really interesting in my work is that the people who find me are often either children of a nasty divorce or, you know, friends of theirs, families went through a nasty divorce, or their friends went through a nasty divorce, and they find me because they're like, we are terrified of lawyers. We are terrified that we are going to end up in this high conflict dynamic that we don't need to be in, because we get along so well. And those are the clients I end up working with, are the people who are, you talk about fear. There's also a fear of the professionals themselves, right? What are they going to do to this case?
Right. And that's terrible because even if, and I'm a huge proponent of going without lawyers and then using lawyers on the back end to
Yes.
doc review and read and give you advice and look through it. But like people are even scared of that. And honestly, I'm scared of it. When I have a client come to me, often I have what I call the kitchen table client.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they basically have sat down, they realize they're getting divorced. They kind of know what their agreement is. And so one of them hires me to draft everything based on that agreement. We draft it, the client approves, we send it over to the other party, and then they can go hire an attorney to help them look through the papers. It's not free, but it's definitely a more
Cheaper
economical.
than a retainer, right?
And then sometimes we kind of hold our breath because who are they going to choose? I can't recommend a specific attorney to them because that could be considered a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, ethical rules. I can't say go to my best friend and have her look at, and I wouldn't want that, So I hold my breath because I'm like, oh, what I do give them though is I give them a link to the collaborative lawyer directory in whatever county they're in. Each county has their own collaborative group of lawyers. So most of the time, if an attorney is doing collaborative divorce work, they're an attorney minded towards work. What you were talking about in the beginning, most professionals that want to see a different way happen in the divorce process, they're going to be more open to giving you advice to get your case settled rather than coming in and be like, oh, we should file this.
I tell my clients this all the time. There's a big difference between having a lawyer review to cover your bases legally and then having a lawyer review to pick apart the agreement and create conflict. Those are
Right.
two extremely different approaches.
Lawyers, not to give us all about anything. That's our job. Our job is to go in and protect our client at all ends.
Yeah.
And so it's a balancing act for me because I guess the difference for me is sometimes I'm going to get my client to talk about the cost benefit analysis. Like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe my client's entitled to $1,000 more a month in alimony, but how much is she going to have to spend? And how much of an emotional toll is it going to take on her family for her to get that extra $1,000 a month? Sometimes she has to, right? That's just the calculus she's willing to take. But I'm the type of attorney to be like, in my own personal situation, I did walk away from, child support. I did not enforce the child support because I had to make only I know the price of my own peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to not constantly be at war. Now, not everybody has that opportunity. Some women, some men, they need the money. That's just it. They're especially these days, it's harder and harder to get by. So, you look at that, well, that's easy for you to say because you're an attorney, blah, blah, blah. Well, I understand every single case is different, but we all have our own line of where, is this really worth it? Is this particular fight? Now, if it is, let's go, right? And let's do it. But I really get my clients to kind of see the benefit of having an agreement you can live with. Maybe you're not going to be in love with it because a mediated agreement or settlement of any kind requires give and take. So nobody's walking out winning And nobody's walking out like, yes, I got everything I wanted. That's just not going to happen. But the question is, can I live with this? So, it's just a balancing act. It's hard to get the right attorneys, but that's one reason why having conversations with a divorce coach,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that you do is you're building a network of trusted professionals that are like-minded. So that's why for me, it's really wonderful when somebody can go to you first and you're like, oh my gosh, you're the person that needs Christine because
Mm-hmm.
you want to settle things, you want to be amicable. And then I know when that client's coming to me, that's what they're looking for, rather than having to be in a household like, well, I want this. Well, I want to do that. And so, I mean, I work hard on my marketing so that I'm pretty sure if you go to my website, which is ChristineDiorio.com, you're going to see I'm not using words like aggressive. I'm not using
That's
words sharp. I'm not doing those kinds because I don't want those clients.
I know. I always tell that to my clients when they tell me they think they found a lawyer that they want to work with. I ask them, okay, well, what kind of research have you done on this person aside from the consult? And you can tell a lot from somebody's messaging on their website and on their social media as far as like what mindset they have. And it's so, and I think the other thing that people don't talk about a lot is how for someone who is not an attorney, lawyers are very intimidating. And I can say this as a non attorney because it is you assume that your lawyer knows more than you do and knows better than you do, right? As someone who's a non-lawyer. And so if you have an attorney that kind of uses that to their advantage, that can be a very weird power dynamic. And I don't think people talk about this enough. Like, so a client may be willing to take $1,000 less to have that peace of mind, to keep their sanity, to move on and keep a good relationship for their kids. But if the lawyer is harping on this, like, no, we can get more, we should keep pushing, knowing
Mhm.
that they're going to get that money in their pocket, that's
Mhm.
where now the client might be too intimidated to say, no, I don't want to. And that's
Exactly.
where, like, I, as a divorce coach, look at my role to tell them, hey, it's okay to say enough because that lawyer works for you, not the other way around. And so, and if it's not a match, it's okay to also find a new one, so that does
Absolutely.
align.
And I think too, part of the problem too is you go, traditionally there weren't divorce coaches. I mean, people, the divorce lawyer did become the person that they went to for all of their advice,
Right.
on the whole scale of the divorce. And that's really not honestly appropriate. I would say sometimes I morph a bit to the coaching side of things because I'm so compassionate, because I'm so open with my own experience. My clients feel like they're able to tell me things and they're
Mm-hmm.
able to share, but it's not a really good use of their legal funds. I'm still working on a retainer, right? So every time you're calling me with emotions and stuff, you're paying my rate as an attorney to talk to me about your emotional issues. So my biggest piece of advice for anybody facing divorce is to treat the divorce like a business deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot easier said than done. The only way that's possible is for you to have some outlet for the emotional experience of the divorce. Your attorney is not, like you said, it's too easy for them to feed into that so that they can make more.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not therapists. We're not therapists, and I'm not a divorce coach. Maybe one day down the road is something I look into, but right now I'm an attorney. That's what I do. I'm not really qualified to help you all the way through your emotional state. So having a divorce coach, so you have an outlet for that part, and you're getting advice that has much more to do with the just the legal side of things. You're getting advice for the overall picture of your life, because the divorce is just one piece of this. The
Right.
divorce will end. You will be going on as a family, as a co-parenting relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Co-parent, separate houses, but you're still a family. You're not getting rid of each other.
Right. You're
You
stuck
know,
with each other whether you want to be or not. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I feel like it's really hard to make it a business deal, but if you're able to take care of yourself emotionally by self-care, therapy, divorce coaching,
Mm-hmm.
then it gives you the opportunity to come in here and be really shrewd and really smart. Because here's the ugly secret that lawyers don't tell you: divorce cases are math. They're math.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually objective in a lot of ways. And so the judges do not want to get involved in what all the nonsense. They don't want to know. They don't give a hoot. They really don't care. That's why it's a no fault divorce state. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so it's really ridiculous to spend 30, 40, 50,000, $100,000 fighting over stuff that legit comes down to a math.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's so charged with emotions, if we've got a situation, an example, he's worked. Listen, this is just hypothetical. It's like, so the gentleman's worked, he's amassed the retirement account. She stayed at home with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say he really wanted her to go back to work, but she didn't want to. She really felt like, staying at home with the kids was like her calling, and so this resentment grew in the marriage where I'm the one paying all the bills.
Right.
I'm the one who has the retirement. Why does she get to have that now that we're getting a divorce? She never wanted to work. There's all this emotion, and it doesn't matter. And that's
right.
why it's called it's still hers, because you wouldn't be making that for the woman. We have plenty of women breadwinners.
The other way around, yeah.
Organizations like that. This is just an example. But anyways, the court doesn't care. It's 50% hers if it was gained through the marriage, period. Because you wouldn't have never made that money if she hadn't have been staying home with the children, right? Because you would have been spending more money on daycare. You would not have advanced in your career because you would have been doing more. So, but people those things get so charged. And money, as you know, is one of the most emotionally charged things in our culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have money issues. So having a team of professionals, whether it's, like you've said, divorce coach, even certified divorce financial analyst,
mm-hmm. Right.
Somebody can help you make this a business deal. Because if you can come in and realize it's going to be, and we use spreadsheets. We literally have spreadsheets to make it 50-50. And you can wrap your head around that, you're going to avoid spending so much money fighting over what the judge is going to do. The judge is going to down the middle.
The thing I always tell my clients is preparation, right? And you said something that I think a lot of clients need to remember is your attorney is there to look out for your best interests and to fight for what you want, right? However, if you are not clear, which is almost every client that I talk to, okay, on what you actually want or even what you have and what the options are, how is your attorney supposed to efficiently move forward in any kind of negotiation if you don't even know what it is that you're asking for? And so that's what a lot of the work I do with clients is sitting down, okay, we're talking about, we want majority time sharing. What does that mean to you? What does that look like? Often I'll have the same person tell me they want majority time sharing, but then they're also overwhelmed, overworked, wish the other parent did more, helped more, was more involved. So I'm like, okay, so which is it then? And that's the stuff we unpack, right? So that by the time the attorney meeting happens, we know exactly what it is that we're asking for. So many times people go into conversations about finances, they don't even know what they have. We don't know what assets we have, what debts are there. So how are we supposed to have an effective negotiation or conversation if we don't even know what we're talking about?
Exactly. I mean, obviously preaching to the choir. So that, of course, that's one of the things we, unfortunately, even though I strive to keep my costs down for my client, if I have a client coming to me who's never paid a bill in the marriage, doesn't know what there is there, then she has to pay us, or he has to pay us to comb through all the financials. And that is a costly, time-consuming process. And so a lot of times we have spent quite a bit of money by the time we're at mediation because we've had to do all of that instead of exactly what we're talking about. Go see a financial person. There's a lot of certified divorce financial analysts out there who can actually kind of do that stuff up front, prepare it for you, and give it to the attorney. So you're still spending money, but not an attorney rate. Right? You're gonna and
maybe just half the rate.
But in my office, then I'm not having to mess with all of that. Now, of course, I'm going to check it, make sure it lines up. We're still going to have to do some work on that. There's just rules of disclosure, etc. But it's a huge benefit to come in with a financial picture right up front, so that you're not getting lost in those weeds. So education is just such a huge piece, and finding the right people to help you get the information that you need. But again, that major reaction is run to the attorney and let the attorney do everything.
Right, because people are very overwhelmed. Everything just seems like this huge mountain to climb. And so, but you got to break it down, right? Like break down things into manageable pieces and then you can get through it. But I think also there's that fear that you talk about is such a huge motivator. And if you can sort of deconstruct this mountain and figure out, okay, Now I understand what assets we have, so I feel like I can make a decision. Now I understand what I realistically want in my time sharing agreement so that I can work and I can build my business and I can have my own time. And, once you're able to really gain clarity, I think that's where the fear starts to move away. And now we can actually have a realistic conversation.
Right.
Because if we're driven by fear, we're not having rational conversations.
Right. I mean, and I share with my clients like when they come in, like, oh, I can't deal with not seeing my kids every day, always, but I'm like, that's the kind of stuff, like, really, I share my own personal story, which is like, I didn't like it either.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time I got, a few years into things, I was like, you know, sharing custody ended up being my superpower as a mom
Mm-hmm.
because I had time for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had time to fill my cup. So when I had my kids, I was like in heaven,
Mm-hmm.
right? I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't like, oh my God, the kids, because when you have them day and day and no help, and so shifting that focus actually helped me have peace with it and actually saw it as a benefit to my children. And I'll share that with my clients. But again, I don't think you want to pay to hear my story. You don't want to pay to hear my advice on those kind of emotional things. That's something that a divorce coach is much more, or therapist, but is
Right.
much
Yeah.
more well positioned to help you work through so that by the time you're coming to me, you're not having an emotional breakdown about the fact that guess what? In Florida, it's 50-50. That's where we're at. It's very difficult to get anything above 50-50.
I think
Or in,
what people struggle with too there is, if there's been one parent historically who has done a lot of the child rearing, right? And the other parent worked a ton and wasn't the one driving them to soccer or doing the dinners or, doing all these things. And now we're going through a divorce process. I think it's really hard sometimes for that parent who was the primary caregiver in the marriage to let go of that role. It's
oh,
very like, what is my relationship? What is my identity? I think this is a big one too that is not talked about enough, that especially for mothers, I think generally it is often mothers, and this isn't a gender issue. It's just, a lot of times women give birth to a child and have this very deep connection those first few years. And if the divorce happens when the children are very young, sometimes caring for that 2 or 3 year old is a major part of the woman's identity during that time.
well, not just that. I think what I experienced because my kids were really little
Right.
was if I don't have my kids majority time sharing, what is that saying about me as a mother? Now, of course, this was in 2007 and 8 when I was
Mhm.
going through my course. So and things have shifted tremendously,
Yeah.
right? Just culturally, everything. But I had identity. What does that say about me as a mother? I
Hmm.
think we've come farther in that now, where more and more of my clients, even in those scenarios you're talking about, are understanding it's 50-50. We
Hmm.
also, I feel like dads are way more involved in this.
Yeah.
So if women are more comfortable with it, but it's a really big piece of that whole calculus when you're trying to wrap your head around a 50-50 time sharing thing. But where another thing to keep in mind is the court looks at it very different. Like, there was one system or structure when it was an intact marriage.
Hmm.
Now it's a different system and structure. And so
Right.
even though that parent may not have been involved during the intact marriage, they will now have the opportunity and will have to. And they're going to give that parent a chance unless there's something very wrong with like verifiable evidence of it,
Which is a very rare, right?
domestic. I mean, you've got to have
Yeah.
a real problem, before you're going to even that dad that kind of was checked out. Well, guess what? Now he's gonna have to get checked back in.
Mhm.
But sometimes those guys or those women or whatever, they know like, oh, I don't want 50. And you're gonna get your fair share of that. So don't I'm not saying all this to scare people because you can
Mhm.
agree to anything you want in your own agreement. But when you leave it up to the judge, most of the time, if they're asking for 50-50 and there's nothing wrong with them, they're going to get it, no matter what they may have done during the marriage to help.
Well, when we talk about the relinquishing of control, right? That's a big emotional issue for most people going through divorce. And I think what people seem to forget sometimes is while in a mediation or collaborative setting, you may have to relinquish some control. If you go before a judge, you're literally relinquishing all control. You have zero control now because 50% custody, right? That can shake out a million different ways. Holiday time sharing, you can have, so I have families who do things that I would have never even thought of that a person would do for time sharing, but it works for them. And,
Right.
there's families where, dad still picks up the kid every single day and has them from 3 to 5, and then they go to mom's house every night, and that's how they do it. And then I have families where it's every other weekend, and that works for them.
Right.
But the minute that you hand that over in a litigation process, it's not your choice anymore.
Wild card. In fact, we have one judge in Tampa, I won't name who that is, who is going to give 50-50 always, unless there's a problem. And even if that is a newborn child, it will be 1 week on, 1 week off.
Wow. Yeah.
There are judges like that. So because they are overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
are overworked, there's not enough, so they are not going to get crafty and creative. They don't have time for that.
Right.
They're going to go black and white. They have fillable sheets.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working with a mediator, working with an attorney, going through the mediation process, you're going to be able to craft a parenting plan that actually works for your family.
And it can step up too. This is what I think sometimes people don't understand either. Like, you can, if you've got like a 1-year-old, for example, maybe you're breastfeeding or something, there's a reason why they need to be with mom more in the beginning, but you can work into that agreement a step up to the 50-50 over whatever period the two of you agree to, versus just overnight, now suddenly I don't see my kid for 7 days. And this is what I always try to help my, especially moms of very young children understand, is if you turn this over, if you go die on this hill of I want full custody or majority custody or nothing, you are potentially setting yourself up for a big rude awakening, and then you're really going to be not happy with the outcome potentially.
Stuck with whatever the judge comes up with.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have found is most of the couples that end up with court-ordered divorce decrees are much more likely to go back to court because they're not going to be happy with it. So they're going to be back on a modification. They're going to be back on contempt and enforcement, more fees, more litigation.
Right.
It's like a big snowball, and you just keep going down, and then so much trust is lost, so much inability to communicate. It's such a bad way to go. There are certain cases, I feel like a very small percentage, that do need to be litigated.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's already a small percentage that go to litigation. But of those cases, it's really only a few of them need to be there. Like if somebody's trying to alienate you from your children,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is literally using money to abuse you, right? Like
Right.
to control. There are certain cases that this is just unavoidable, right? But that's the whole point. It should be the absolute last resort. Unfortunately, it's where we go.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we're still classically, traditionally law firms, family law firms. That's what they're doing because that's their whole business model,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many trials do we need a year to reach our goals?
Right. Our goal, yeah.
Our billable hour quotients, etc. And they have these, rural, associates working on the double, and that's the thing. They have these billable hour requirements. So you've got an associate there digging up stuff to do on your case because they've got to meet this or you're going to get in trouble. My law is we don't work on, nobody has requirements. Every case is different. So I'm not going to say I need to see X number of hours on this case.
Right.
Some cases need a lot of time. Some cases don't. And, and I'm not going to invent work to do so that, because my whole feeling is if I serve my clients well, if I'm honest with them,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to always have enough clients.
Right.
And that's why we've grown. That's why we have a team now, everything like that. So that's just my philosophy on how to do this business. Try to add, I don't know, some kind of positive energy back into it. Try to change people's perceptions of attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not cheap. It's still not easy. Even the most amicable case requires a lot of work. It's just there's just a lot to it. There's filing fees and there's drafting fees and there's all these things that go on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not fun. But if you come in armed with a good coach, a good CDFA on your side,
And a plan.
and a plan, you're going to save so much money, so much time, so much stress, so much overwhelm. you
Right. And
know.
well, let's talk about that stress too, because, the financial element, people are well aware, right? Divorce is expensive. I think that's a big, motivator as far as the fear is concerned. Like, I am terrified I'm going to spend my life savings on this. Often that does happen, unfortunately. Um, but let's talk about that too, right?
Managing stress.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice always is to make your self care your priority. I know self care now to this at this point just gets
It's
thrown
like
around.
one of those words people can't even hear it anymore, right?
Narcissist. Everyone's divorcing a narcissist.
Yes.
There's only really a few people who are, but because everybody gets really narcissistic when they're in an adversarial process,
Sure.
right?
Right.
So
The worst comes out.
right. So, but not everybody is fine. But self care, what does that mean for you? And that's where a coach comes to help you come up with a self care plan.
Hmm.
But my clients who fare the best through their divorce are the ones who do take that like deadly serious. So divorce support group, they're free. Usually are churches, but there's online ones too. I know there's divorce coaches out there that run them themselves with their clients. You know, therapists, taking time for yourself, going on a solo trip. I could spend. I write about this on my blog all the time
Hmm.
because that's if you're just sitting in a heightened state of stress and fear throughout the entire process. Your kid. So what I tell people is, your kids are going to be okay if you're okay,
Hmm.
right? You need to be focused in on you. You need to get yourself taken care of so that you're able to just be present for them, right? Because that's the thing. They just need to know, like, okay, we're
I
still a
still
family.
have my parents. They still love me. Right.
No love has changed as
Mhm.
far as her parent to child. That's all the same, right? Yes, mom and dad are changing, but the love we have for you, that's all the same, right? And dad's a good guy. Mom's awesome. We want those kinds of, but if you're in a heightened state of fear in an adversarial process,
Mhm.
you're bleeding money to your attorney, you're
Right.
in
How can
court,
you not be stressed out? You're bleeding away your life savings. You don't feel
tell
like
me
you
what
have any
your life's
answers.
look like. Where are you going to live? I mean, I know one of the things we're seeing, we've talked about this before, is because of the interest rates right now and because of rent and because of prices, some couples are like, they can't move out. They don't know how are they going to live? Like, it's really scary. It's stressful, but there's a way through, right? When you can really slow down long enough, talk it through with your coach, come up with a plan. That's how you manage stress. So I would say self-care and education.
Mhm.
Get yourself educated, get yourself informed. Don't put yourself in the position that your attorney knows more than you. I mean, yes, we know more than you as far as legal stuff.
About the law, but they don't know more than you about your
Not
family. So that's
about
going to be a
your
factor.
family, not about your process.
Right.
There's so much out there. There's so many blogs. There's so many awesome Instagram accounts.
Mhm.
Um, if you're into social media, if coaches, there's so many sources of information that you can use to really arm yourself so that you're using your attorney strategically,
Mhm.
right? Like a
Okay.
specialist for the legal side of this, not for the whole thing.
And on that point too, being really careful on who you surround yourself with and what Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts you are following
Yes.
because people
Not home.
people are bitter, okay? Like there are so many people who go through a divorce, they have a nasty divorce, they didn't get what they wanted, they have a bad co-parenting relationship, they have all this negativity. And as you go through divorce, you have a lot of times new friends that come into your life, new friend group, new support, whatever, all these people. And, if you're getting your advice from somebody who had a nasty, contentious, bitter divorce, or who might have completely different dynamics than you, or if you're following 17 narcissist Instagram accounts where every 5 seconds you're seeing oh yeah, that's my ex-husband. Look at that. Exactly how he is. I'll never be able to get anywhere with him because he'll never change. How is that helpful, right? That is not productive at all.
Not at all. No. And and another one is going to your family for advice. I don't recommend it.
Hmm.
Because like for instance, to this day, my dad gets on to me. You should have made him pay you that child support. My dad's looking at his daughter.
Right.
He wants the best for me. He wants me fully protected. He wants him to hurt, right? Because he sees it as I was hurt by him. So our families they're not living day to day co-parenting with that person though.
No.
They're just seeing us hurting. And of course they want us to get the most out of it. They want that person punished for hurting their loved one. But they're not the best source of advice for that. Or the girlfriend that, took her husband to the cleaners. Every single case is different. So I get that a lot. Well, my sister got this. Well, my cousin got my best friend. And I'm like, well, look, every case is like a
But
puzzle with all different parts.
at what cost did they get
Exactly.
that?
Are they speaking to him? Do they sit next to each other at the soccer games?
Yeah.
Because as a child of divorce, and that's another part of my story, my parents had a very bad divorce when I was in 5th and 6th grade. My parents couldn't even be in the same room together until I graduated from high school. They wouldn't speak to each other. All messaging went back through me. Now, this is in the 80s and 90s, and I'm not disparaging my parents.
Times, yeah.
Well, I mean, it was different times, but it did not help me any. You know what I mean? And so, you've got to think about what's going to be best for your kids. And, now my parents get along great. Again, another hopeful story. Every Christmas, both of them are sitting in my living room. We all play nice now and everything like that. But that's what I try to tell people. You're not done with each other. As much as you'd love to be. There's going to be graduations, weddings, God willing, grandchildren one day. You want to be at the birthday parties. And you don't want to feel uncomfortable. I mean, this is so much bigger than right now. And they're, look, with time, even with the nastiest couples, it dies down after a while. And once you kind of hit a rhythm and a routine, you're going to find a way, right? Some low percentage, they stay in that conflict. I know you've seen those kids, they're just always forever. But most of us do eventually find a rhythm, find a new normal. We move on, we marry somebody else, we get a new relationship, and everything kind of flows. So even if it's really tense and you don't ever see that happening, you're spoke for everybody. I'm here to tell you that. Yeah. But you have why not start that now? Well, why not start that from the beginning? With an attorney, like one of the differences in our office, we're not just going to serve somebody divorce papers at work or while they're with the kids.
Yes, this is so funny that you brought this up.
Yeah, here you go. You're being sued. That's how we start divorces in this country.
Right. No, and that's, it's funny you said that because I had a client recently come to me, very amicable dynamics. They were friendly, they were separating, but really good place. Very young child who was also autistic. And, she kind of came to me and she's like, yeah, I found this lawyer and they basically told me the process was going to be that, we're going to file for divorce and he's going to get served and then this, that. And then I was like, stop. I was like, who is the lawyer? Let me see their website. And the first thing I saw on the website was aggressive family law litigation. We will fight for your right and this, that, and the other. And I was like, first of all, that is not the only way you can do this. And she was shocked to hear that. She's like, what do you mean? That was what they told me the process is. It's like, no, that isn't the only process. That's the most aggressive process. But the other option is you come to all your agreements first and then file everything together. It's like, that's the opposite end of the spectrum. But she could have potentially, this is the whole point of this entire conversation for me, like the kind of the headline. This woman who had an amicable relationship with her husband, a special needs child who needed the parents to get along more than ever, right? Going to be struggling with the transition to begin with, was potentially going to get roped into an extremely litigious process, aggressive process, unbeknownst to her, there was any other option. And that is the whole point. We've got to do the research. We need to know there's other options and find the attorneys who have our mindset so that we can have the right representation.
You want an attorney aligned with your values.
Right.
So I think that's the thing. Some people want that chart. Right. That's what they want, right? But if, like you're saying, they don't, there are attorneys like me out there, you've got to do so when you're searching on Google, like amicable lawyer, amicable divorce, collaborative divorce,
right?
The mediator, those kinds of, instead of just divorce lawyer in my area, well, you're going to probably get your classic, people. One of the things you can do, even with couples that probably aren't seeing eye to eye and there is moderate conflict, we still at my office first send out a letter. So we send a letter, we let them know we've been retained. Of course, this can be very damaging to families, and we would love to see this worked out through settlement. We don't want to do that, so please respond to our office within 10 days or with your attorney within 10 days to let us know if you're interested in working this out amicably.
Yeah.
And then if we don't hear from you, please understand you will get served.
Right.
At that point, so we set the tone from the beginning. We don't want to see this go. And I have the specific language. We have it in the letter. It's just very calm. It's not like we're coming for you. And then I use a private investigator at my office to serve people, because we do not serve people at work. We do not serve people in front of their children. Those are two of my biggest no-nos. I won't do it.
This is again what I think we need to pause on this for 1 second, because I don't think people understand this process. They're like, oh, we're getting divorced, I'm just going to file for divorce. When you file for divorce, if you just file with the court, you have no control over when your ex-partner is going to be served a divorce lawsuit, which is what it technically is a lawsuit when you do it.
Well, it's up to them in a police car.
Right. They could literally be at your kid's soccer game. They could be having friends over at their house and be completely embarrassed. They could be at a work conference. They could be anywhere.
Did you hear like the story of Jason Sudeikis, where he was going through a custody battle and served the mother of his children in the middle of a speech? She was giving a speech, and the service processor came out and process server served her in the middle of her speech. I mean, that is the worst way, And
how do you expect anybody to ever respond positively to that? They're at their job. They have a cop come up and serve them. Like, that's never going to end well.
Shots fired, right? That's what that is. And most people haven't ever been sued. This is the first time they've ever been involved in a lawsuit. And that's what a divorce really is, the way that we do this in this country. So it's very upsetting. And you have to ask in a petition for divorce, you have to ask for everything you could get, or you lose your opportunity to fight for it later.
Right.
So you'll put in there, and then all of a sudden you're seeing all this. She wants to take the kids from me. When really, no.
Right.
We're just the legal process. We have everything out on the table, but we have no intention of doing that. And then now everybody's freaked out. They're running off to find the meanest lawyer in town, and here we go.
Right. Well, in Florida, they only have 20 days to respond. So, right, they got 20 days to find a lawyer, figure out the plan.
And they want to make sure they're not taken advantage of. They're overwhelmed, so they feel insecure. So they want that aggressive attorney, and the aggressive attorney's playing on those emotions. Oh, if I could stop it all, and just that everybody take a breath, right? You don't even have to have attorneys to get divorced. Right. Now, that said, it's a legal process. At the end of the day, everybody does have to file, and everybody does have to have the judge's signature. So having a lawyer involved at some level is the proven smart thing to do if it's the right attorney. It's just not necessarily required. And some people have the fund, they don't have the funds for it. They just don't. Yeah. So they're forced to go that way, right?
Right.
It's gotten so exorbitant. But even let's just say, like, I have executive clients, they're executives, their case is totally amicable, but they don't want to be figuring out the deadlines and when to file this and how much needs to be filed. And so they do hire me to make sure that somebody, a professional, who does this day in and day out, is taking care of those things. Again, the stress. That's helping their emotional state by having a professional in charge of it, but knowing they can trust me not to create more of a mess, more litigation, more bad feelings between their spouse. They just want to get on with their lives, right? Where's that attorney? That's what you're looking for, not the ones that want to try to convince you to fight for every single thing.
And then meanwhile, pay them all the money that you're fighting over, by the way, because that happens. We're fighting over $150,000 and we each pay our lawyer $50, and now what's left? $50. So had we just agreed to split it however way in the beginning, we wouldn't have been here.
So it's like, I always tell them, do you want to pay for my kids to go to college or for your kids to go to college? Because that's what it's coming down to. I mean, I have had cases that have gone on. I've had a few different clients that we've been together for 3 years. So you can only imagine by the end of the case how much you're spending when you have a divorce attorney on retainer for 3 years.
Right.
And at the end of the day, was it worth it? Was it usually in my case, because I'm not the attorney, we have another party who's high conflict. And so we're drug in all the time by them. And so I'm having to respond and do things like that. But, why? If you can avoid that, I'm just telling you from my own personal experience. And then, of course, seeing it as an attorney, there is just a better way through this. And I'm hoping like we're able to change the system. The system to me, you hear that the system's broken. And then some people say it's not broken. It's working perfectly for the lawyers and the judges and keeping them in, having careers and having high salaries. But it's broken for families. doesn't serve families. And I'm just so passionate about trying to be a voice for change. Even just my little law office, one little case at a time here in the Tampa
Right, but it
Bay area.
makes but you know what? There's a generational impact to that because how parents' divorce goes influence the child's well-being, and that influences their children's well-being. It's a whole, so it does make an impact. And I will say, I know several judges here. I'm in Seminole County in Orlando, and there's several judges I've talked to who are like, sitting on the family law bench is one of the hardest places to be as a judge emotionally, because you're sitting there and you're listening to people where you're just like, oh my gosh, you guys, is this really what you're making me make a decision on? And you don't really have, every judge I've talked to said, I don't really have enough information to make the decision in the way I want to make it, but I have to make a decision. And so
Wow.
often I make the decision, then I'm like, gosh, was that the right decision? I'm not sure. I
And
made the
that's
decision with the information I had. And
so
that's
that's why they go right down the middle.
right.
They make it as easy, as non-specific. I mean, so that's why you end up with an order you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to figure, oh wait, you can't pick up the kids after school because your work schedule too bad. Now that's what the judge ordered, right? It's really unfortunate. But anyway, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad.
I feel like this is one of those topics we could just sit here for 7 hours talking about it. But
for days and days and days, I really appreciate you having me on and getting to talk about this, because it's not something I get to talk about all the time, because I'm usually working and dealing with litigation or dealing with my cases or writing agreements. So this is way more fun.
Yes. Well, so Christine, thanks so much for being on here with me. And again, just if people want to find you, how do they find you?
Well, okay, so definitely my website, www.christinediorio.com. It's Christine, ChristIne, Diorio, Diorio. And then I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. And our office number, 813-322-2082. Again, I can help anybody in the state. And again, I do free consults, at least for now. Might not always be that, but I'm really passionate about education. So I try to offer free consults. So even if you just want that conversation on the different paths, or just to get more education, give us a call.
Awesome. And I'll post all that too on the comments so that if people want to find you, they can click through there. So, well, I appreciate it so much. And by the way, I love the 4th of July nails. They're very festive.
What's going on? Thank you, Sina. Thank you. And I'm so glad for the work you're doing and just being such a strong voice for co-parenting and doing it a better way. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.